Good evening and welcome to Talk of the Neighborhoods. I'm Joe Heisler, your host, coming to you from the BNN Live studios, Eggleston Square, Jamaica Plain, where tonight on the Boston Neighborhood Network, well, we'll continue our election 2014 coverage. And as the summer comes, all the campaigns are heating up, especially those for statewide office. Tonight, a two-part show, two parties as well. First up, tonight, the man that many people say is the odds-on favorite to win the Democratic Convention endorsement this weekend in Worcester. He is, of course, State Treasurer Steve Grossman. Tonight we'll talk about the convention and his campaign for governor in the primary ahead. Then in the second half, well, two members of the Republican State Committee join us to talk about their efforts to attract more people of color to join the mass GOP. As you know, part of Mitt Romney's problems nationally was a failure to attract members of people of color to his campaign. Well, they're trying to change all of that. Rachel Kemp and Robert Fortes join us. All that and more tonight on Talk of the Neighborhoods. All right, we're back with Talk of the Neighborhoods. I'm Joe Heisler, your host. Two-part show tonight, all politics as is our usual want. First up with the Democratic Party, because, of course, this weekend is the annual state Democratic Convention, and perhaps none has been more important to this party than this year's convention, as there's several races on the ballot. Of course, the rule is you must get 15% of the convention delegates to go on to the state primary ballot. And joining me tonight, the man that many people believe is the odds-on favorite to win the endorsement of the State Democratic Convention. He is, of course, the state treasurer of the Commonwealth, campaigning hard, but took a few minutes to come in and join us tonight. Steve Grossman joins us. Nice to have you here, Steve.
Thank you for having me back. We were just reminiscing about the first time I was on with you, going all the way back to 1997 when I was chairman of the Democratic National Committee over in the transportation building in another part of town. A lot of extraordinary work that you've done over the years.
You know, and the Democrats have had a lot of success over the years since, and of course, and some of that should go to you, maybe not all of it, but it's a new year, a new political climate, and I want to ask you first about the convention.
Sure.
Of course, you're being seen as the convention front runner, and I want to ask you about that label. Is that uncomfortable? Kind of put a target on your back as you approach this important event?
No, it's not uncomfortable. I mean, I'm honored to have so many delegates who have said, we'll support you because we believe in your candidacy. We believe that somebody who has spent his whole life in business, creating jobs right here in the Boston area, and then came into the treasurer's office and did exactly the same thing, kept his promises all the way through the last 4 years that we're supporting you. But look, Joe, nobody has anything locked up. I spent 6 hours yesterday calling delegates one by one. They were surprised to hear from me, but you learn so much when you listen to people. My father used to say, Steve, you were born with one mouth and two ears. Use them in that proportion. When you listen to those delegates, those activists, they tell you what's on their mind, they tell you what's going on in their communities, in their neighborhoods, and you are a better person and a better leader as a result. So nobody has anything locked up, but I'm looking forward to the convention, and we look forward to coming out of the convention strong.
In terms of your strategy going forward, though, how important is an endorsement? You've been in office now since 2010. One of your competitors, Attorney General Coakley, has been in much longer.
Right.
In as much as name recognition is important, and of course that's just part of the equation. How important is it to your campaign and your campaign strategy to win the endorsement, to give you a boost in name recognition?
Look, momentum in politics matters enormously. So to come out of that convention strong, with a strong wind at your back, to be able to take the message that you delivered on Saturday afternoon all over the state, to the neighborhoods of Boston, to the older industrial cities. I mean, my message is very simple. I want to build one Commonwealth that levels the playing field and leaves no one behind. There are too many people who feel left out and left behind. This economic recovery has been very uneven. You know it, I know it. And so my whole life has been devoted to leveling the playing field. So I look forward to the convention. I think we'll have a good day.
Come what may.
Yeah, but I'll look forward to, I'd be honored to have the endorsement of the convention. I'd be proud to have that endorsement. I don't know how many winners of the convention have gone on to win the nomination in September, but many have done that. So I want to be in that tradition, because when I win that primary on September 9th and go on to face Charlie Baker, we're going to talk about two different visions for this Commonwealth, two different approaches to how do you empower people and lift people up. And that's what I have been working on all my life.
And I want to talk more about that, because this, I think we're in part seeing certainly a different Charlie Baker. But just very quickly back to the convention for a minute. The 15% rule, where you have to get 15% of the convention delegate votes.
On the first ballot.
On the first ballot, to get onto the primary ballot in September. There's a recent Herald poll that showed it's quite unpopular. Of course, most of those people opposing it have never been to a convention. But is it fair? Do you think that's a good idea?
I'm fine with the 15% rule. I mean, after all, if you can't attract 15% of the activists, the people who go out there and knock on doors and hold signs and make phone calls, and are the ones who are passionate about politics and passionate about their candidates, if you can't get 15% of those, plus the 10,000 signatures, then the question is, should you be on the ballot? So the leaders of the Democratic Party said, let's implement a 15% rule. It's there. Everybody knew the rules when they started. So I'm fine with the rules that have been set up, and I think we'll all roll with the punches. And
well, there's 5 of you in the race, at least 5 declared candidates in the Democratic race. Would you rather, does it work better for you, for your strategy, to have more in the race, or would you rather go head-to-head against, say, Attorney General Coakley?
You know, I think you can overthink these things. My feeling is, let the delegates decide, let the people decide, and whoever's on the ballot will have good debates, good discussions. But I want to come out of that convention strong so that we can take this message. I'm going to go on the road over the next couple of weeks in every corner of this Commonwealth, in every one of these communities that have been left out, unemployment rates that are strong, big, double-digit unemployment rates. Poverty is the biggest issue we face, Joe. Poverty results in a lower level of educational attainment, lower level of economic attainment. We've got to find a way to break that cycle of poverty, lift up the minimum wage, give people earned sick time, find a way to train people, give English language learners the training they need so that they're able to go out and get a job in this innovation economy that's been so punishing to people without an education. That's what this is all about.
Well, that Suffolk University poll that was published in the Herald also showed, of course, that the economy is the biggest issue, despite a seeming recovery. But it also showed you trailing Attorney General Coakley. What should we make of that? Is that a concern?
Well, she's got 95% name recognition. My name recognition is lower. So you'd naturally expect that people are going to check off somebody whom they know better. But I have no doubt that when we finally begin to sell or tell our story on television, all over the state, in debates and all kinds of events that are going to take place, begin to tell that story and draw a comparison. I mean, fundamentally, Joe, if you want to break it right down, I've spent my life in business and as treasurer creating jobs. I want to be known in this campaign as the progressive job creator. Martha Coakley, if she's my principal opponent, she's a prosecutor. So I want to give the people of Massachusetts a choice. Do you want a progressive job creator who can help create 75 to 100,000 new jobs every year, broadly shared, so you don't leave people behind? Or do you want somebody who's been a prosecutor? She's been a good one. She's been a good attorney general. But I've spent my life creating jobs, and that is what people want. They also want somebody who knows how to run government, who knows how to lead, who knows how to watch every dime of taxpayers' money. That's also important.
And which is a good segue to my next question, which is, Governor Patrick. In your mind, has he done a good job? And how would you be different than Governor Patrick?
I'm a small business owner all my life. That's how I spent my life. So I see things through the prism of how do you create and help small business owners grow jobs? And the biggest issue that I was told, I went to Orchard Park one night about 4 years ago, sat with a group of owners of businesses, went up to Hector Pena's restaurant on Morangue on Blue Hill Avenue, sat with Hector and some Latino business owners, and I said, what are the biggest issues you face? And overwhelmingly, it was access to capital. I can't get the money. I've got a good idea. So we created the Small Business Banking Partnership. We brought money back from Europe and Australia and Asia. We put it back in local banks. And what happened? Over 8,000 loans. A lot of those to businesses owned by women, people of color, immigrants, and veterans. So that, to me, is what people want to hear. They want to know that you are connected to their needs and that you can help create jobs and that you can lift up the small business sector. Look, Deval Patrick, during the toughest days of the recession, said, I believe in Massachusetts. I'm going to invest in Massachusetts. He created a $1 billion investment in life sciences. He created the whole Massachusetts Clean Energy Center. And we've created a lot of jobs as a result of that. So I give Deval Patrick very solid marks for having led the state through 4 of the toughest years in 75 years. He's done a solid job, and he's given us a foundation on which to build.
Of course, people, and I'm playing a little devil's advocate here, but people want to point to all the problems of management
Right.
that have come about. Take your pick. Any number of computer systems crashing, DCF. Take your pick. And will you handle those things differently? How would you have handled the DCF crisis, the Department of Children and Families?
I would have accepted Olga Roche's resignation a lot sooner than he did. When she submitted her resignation, I would have said, Olga, regrettably, I accept your resignation. Why? Because the people of Massachusetts had lost faith in the DCF. DCF is responsible for 36,000 children. And there are 3 fundamental principles in leading DCF. The safety of every child, accountability at every level from the commissioner all the way down to the person who works and just got hired yesterday, and finally reform. So there's a reform agenda. The Child Welfare League has given us a roadmap as to how to reform it. Let's remember that we've cut $100 million out of the budget of DCF over the last 5 years. The number of social workers there are not adequate for the task. Some social workers are handling over 20 cases. They're not supposed to handle more than 15. So there's a lot of blame all around for the crisis that DCF has faced. And look, I said publicly that when that computer system crashed, the connector site, and wasn't working, and Deval Patrick and his administration offered a no-bid contract to somebody, I said, that's wrong. You're not going to see, Joe, any no-bid contracts for big contracts like that in a Grossman administration, because fundamentally, you need to be there to protect every dime of taxpayers' money. Taxpayers demand it. That's why I put the state's checkbook online. Remember I promised it when I was running?
Yeah.
And we put it online in the first year I was in office. Why? Because the taxpayers spend $23 billion in taxes, and they have a right to know how every dime is being spent. It's their money, not ours.
Yet, despite your record, and I think everyone would say you've done a great job as treasurer for whatever, and my opinion as well. But
Thank you.
there's some, between the problems that Governor Patrick has faced, some of the fallout that has hit the Obama administration, and obviously that's the federal government versus state government, but there's some almost guilt by association there, and that it could affect the chances of any Democrat, any of the Democrats that's nominated for governor this year.
Joe, that's what...
Are you afraid of that?
No, I'm not. That's what Charlie Baker would want to tell you. Charlie Baker would say, look, I'm a job creator and I know how to run government. Charlie Baker ran government back in the 20th century. He's 20th century kind of a guy. I've run government over the last 3.5 years, almost 4 years at Treasury, and every promise I made, I kept. We reformed the lottery. It's running record profits, which goes right back to cities and towns and unrestricted local aid for firefighters and police officers and senior centers. We have done a solid job, I think, managing the pension funds. We've returned record amounts of unclaimed property to the people of the state. I mean, it may not be stuff that people focus on every day, but it's all about leadership. And the job of governor is to run a state with 85,000 employees, $36 billion, and to make it work effectively. It's about customer service in many ways. You know, people expect good customer service. They expect the T to run properly. They don't expect old rail cars. They don't expect bad service. They expect improved service. So I'm going to roll up my sleeves as governor next January and begin to look at ways to run government in a more effective way, consistent with protecting the taxpayers' money. That's what people expect.
Well, there's some interesting large issues on the
Big issues.
horizon,
Exactly.
very big issues. And Attorney General Coakley was here earlier, not today, but last week, and we were talking about education in particular. And she made a comment I thought was very interesting. This was in relation to the Common Core and the new park test that is due to be rolled out to replace the AMCAs. And she said it may be time to rethink that whole notion of standardized testing, or at least how we go about it. Do you agree with that?
Well, I think we need to evaluate how people are doing at every level. I mean, everything in our society is judged. I mean, your show is judged by how well you do and how many people watch your show.
Yes.
You wouldn't be here if people didn't watch the show. So everything gets evaluated. We need standards. But I think we've gone somewhat overboard in testing, and it's crowded out a lot of other things. My wife is a theater historian. She's been a teacher for 43 years. She's vice chair of the Mass Cultural Council. We have squeezed the arts out of the curriculum. Arts matter in the lives of children. We've squeezed civics out of the curriculum. Knowing something about history and how things work, that's important. We've squeezed physical education and sports out of the curriculum. So I think we've gone a little overboard. I think we've got to recalibrate that, create more balance. So I believe in standards. I believe in accountability. But I believe that you have to reevaluate sometimes. But I also think that we've got other things to do. There are 30,000 children, as you and I are talking, who aren't going to school at ages 3 and 4. 1 out of every 5 children in this state don't have a place to go. Universal pre-K is something we have to come to grips with and underwrite.
We're better off focusing on that.
We've got to do that. You know why? Because if kids aren't learning how to read fluently by the time they finish the 3rd grade at age 8, they may not catch up. They may be left behind. We can't leave kids behind. And too many of those kids are in the older industrial cities and in the neighborhoods of Boston. Your educational attainment should not be determined by the zip code in which you were born. That's a fundamental
And the
principle.
state, under a Grossman administration, would be willing to step up to help cover the costs of that, because it is a pretty...
You've got to phase it in over a period of time. Start with the 4-year-olds, then go to the 3-year-olds. It's affordable. We have to do it. Look, it's a moral imperative, and it is an economic imperative. That is the backbone of our workforce long term.
Well, and speaking of revenue, what about gambling? Of course, that's we've put in a whole system in place to select casino operators in different locations around the state ongoing. Now there's a talk, or there's not talk, there's a attempt to place it back on the ballot, or place it on the ballot, I should say, whether it should go forward. Should it go on the ballot?
Well,
the AG said, made a decision that it shouldn't go on the ballot.
Right. Look, it's now the subject of a lawsuit. It's in the hands of the Supreme Judicial Court. It's become a constitutional issue. So you got to let the people who understand constitutional law, the justices of the Supreme Judicial Court, make that decision. Look, fundamentally, I think that the citizens should have a right to make decisions about our lives, which means ballot questions sometimes are inconvenient, but I think people have a right to put things on the ballot, and they have a right to vote on those. This becomes a complicated matter because it's in front of the court. It's a lot of jobs. It's 15,000 jobs, and there are still 237,000 people out of work, as you and I are talking. And 15,000 jobs is a lot of jobs. And
Tough
those are
to
good
thumb your
jobs.
nose at that.
Well, it is, and these are decent jobs. Some people say they're bad jobs, but they're going to pay $40, $45, $48, $50,000 a year with health benefits, with pension benefits, many of them union jobs. So I did support expansion of casino gambling. I had one appointment. Enrique Zuniga was my appointment, a pretty distinguished guy. And so I will vote, if it's on the ballot, I will vote to retain it on the ballot and retain the law. But it's not the future of Massachusetts. That's not how we're going to build a great Commonwealth.
Stopgap measure. Okay, we've got just a minute or so left. I've got to ask you, of course, 8 years from now, maybe 9 years from now, Steve Grossman has been governor, and what will you most want Governor Grossman to be remembered for? What will be the thing that you think you can accomplish?
3 things.
That you want to be remembered
Joe,
for?
3 things very quickly. First, I've said I want to help create 75 to 100,000 new jobs in the state. I want that broadly shared. When I say one Commonwealth and leave no one behind, that's about doing things in a very different way. The partnership between Madison Park and Roxbury Community College is an example of kind of new approaches. So jobs is the most important. Number two, we've got to reform our criminal justice system. We are incarcerating people at a cost of $47,000 per inmate when we should be treating behavioral health and substance abuse as a health care issue. So I have said that I will issue an executive order and suspend prison construction within a month of becoming governor. We've got to take a serious look and build more detox beds, more step-down units, more recovery units, more things like Hope House in Dorchester that really work. And finally, we've got to reform our healthcare system because we're going to go broke if we don't figure out a way to get our healthcare costs under control. We've got to have more people got to use community health centers, local community hospitals, more wellness programs, and we've got to find a way to reform it to keep our costs under control. It's squeezed everything else out. Environmental justice has been squeezed out, environmental oversight, the arts, so many things have been squeezed out. We've got to find the resources to make those investments. Freeze fees and tuitions for every student at our public colleges and universities because our students are drowning in debt. Those are the things I'd like to be known for 8 years from now.
All right. Again, State Treasurer Steve Grossman, hoping to become Governor Steve Grossman. This weekend, the State Democratic Convention will help to select a candidate that the party officially endorses. The primary election in September, like all of you, will be following very closely. Steve, I want to thank you so much for coming in and joining us.
Look forward to coming back.
I hope so. And when you're governor, you'll come back on the show.
But if I have a standing invitation, I will be here regularly.
All right. I would love to hear it. Again, State Treasurer Steve Grossman. When we return, well, we'll shift gears or shift parties, perhaps is a better word. Joining me, Rachel Kemp, Robert Fortes from the State Republican Committee. They'll talk about their efforts to expand the outreach to people of color by the Mass GOP, and we'll talk about the party's prospects in the fall as well.